part of the IOM Radio Network.
IPMNation.com.
Tonight on Unleashed, one poll shows Trump with a 35% lead. The Republican establishment is freaking out and is actually planning a brokered convention to try to steal the nomination away from him. Meanwhile, Trump has said if the party doesn't treat him right, he's just going to run third party. Congratulations, President-elect Hillary Clinton. You had this one sewn up 2 months before the New Hampshire primary, and you didn't even have to do anything to win. It's amazing. It is Thursday, December 10th, 2015, just after 11 p.m. in the Eastern Time Zone. Matt Connarton Unleashed starts right now.
Auto sequence starts. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live on this Thursday evening, December 10th, 2015, from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire, coming to you on IPM Nation Live Station 1, and of course, because it's Thursday, the new OTR FM, the premium channel on OMTimes Radio. So wonderful to have you with me. It is December 10th, and still here in the Northeast, or at least in New Hampshire, where I am, no snow. And it's supposed to be 60 degrees this weekend. So I know it's not technically winter yet, but so far, this is a pretty awesome late fall. And I know I mention it every show, and you're going to hear me so totally bummed out when it eventually snows. I'm sure we're not going to get the whole winter without snow, but we are supposed to have a mild one this year, and it's really shaping up that way. So thankful for that. Let's see, a couple quick programming notes. So if you're listening live tomorrow night, Friday night here on the show, and of course, Friday nights we are strictly on IPM Nation. We're only on OTR FM Tuesdays and Thursday nights, but 5 nights a week we're on IPM Nation 1 at 11 p.m. Eastern. And tomorrow night, the great Slicko, host of Slicko's World, will be joining me by phone. And he wanted to come on the other night, but I said, you know what, Slicko, I think Friday night is the night to have you on, because Friday nights, whereas we're only on IPM Nation, Slicko, he can be a little bit, he tends to swear a lot. You'll hear some F-bombs with Slicko. So he's not really OTR FM material, but on IPM Nation, anything goes. So that's the one guideline that I've been given. I have to say, the good people at OMTimes have been fantastic about being hands-off as far as the show. They don't tell me what to do or what to talk about or anything like that. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity. And I'm also very grateful that, they're not trying to control my show in any way, because you hear, a lot of very oftentimes radio hosts will complain about, the station that they're on or the network that they're on, trying to control their content and whatnot. And OMTimes has been great about that. The only guideline I've ever been given is, let's not have profanity if we could avoid it. So, and of course, that's easy for me because I'm not one to swear a lot anyway. I don't walk around going, F this, F that. Like, some people use the F word like it's a comma. I don't use a lot of profanity because I understand that, when you do drop an F-bomb, you want it to really count. And if you go around just using it indiscriminately, then it doesn't count. People become desensitized to it. So, but I mean, that's not a criticism of people who swear a lot, but Slicko, he'll be dropping some F-bombs. So we'll do him on Friday night when we're only on IPM Nation. And, Friday nights, usually if there's one night of the week where we're really just kind of laid back on the show and it's just kind of anything goes and maybe we'll get away from politics sometimes. When we do that, it's usually on a Friday. So tomorrow night, Slicko will be here. You can hear that on IPM Nation 1. And then Monday night, we've got a very interesting show planned, and Monday nights we're strictly on IPM Nation 1. But first half of the show, Rob Arnaudin, I'm not sure how to say his last name, but Rob from the Rob and Slim Show, which you can hear Wednesdays on IPM Nation 2. A great show that we picked up recently. Rob is going to join me in the first half of the show by telephone. We'll get to know Rob a little bit. And then in the second half, I've got Emor David, who is a Nigerian author. We'll get serious in the second half of the show, talking to Emor David. He's received death threats for his work, and I guess he's in some danger, and hopefully he'll be okay. But we're going to talk to him. And the way I've been describing it, if you're a regular listener to the show, you've already heard me make this analogy, but I'll just go back to it just very, very briefly, and then we'll move on to what I discussed in the intro of tonight's show. But, years ago, it was a couple decades ago now, Salman Rushdie, author of the Satanic Verses, was, he had written a book, I guess, kind of satirizing Islam and whatnot. And one of the Iranian ayatollahs, I think, had issued a fatwa, if I'm saying that even remotely correctly, which means that, basically a bounty on his head. And, Salman Rushdie is still with us. They never did get him. And actually, he ended up becoming globally famous because of that controversy. But, it's not every day that, it's not everyone, I should say, who has an Iranian ayatollah say, hey, do me a favor and kill this guy. But I guess Emor David is kind of in a similar situation. We'll find out how similar, but I guess he's been put in some danger for some of his own work. So that'll be very interesting. So we'll have a very interesting show Monday night. So Unleashed, as I said, 5 nights a week now, Monday through Friday, because there's just so much to talk about at 11 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, the television edition every Wednesday. And every Tuesday and Thursday, of course, we're also on OTR FM. And very honored and privileged to be on there as well, or on here, I should say, since we're on here right now. And really, that association, being a part of the OMTimes Radio Network really, or the OMTimes Radio Network, I should say, really gives us a chance to talk to a global audience. Earlier tonight, by the way, and you can find this in the archive, I was on the Dr. Kevin Show, which is on OMTimes Radio 1. And you can find that archive at omtimes.com/IOM. And we got into a little bit of this. We got a little bit political this week. Typically it's the second Thursday of every month. I'm on with Dr. Kevin for Thirst Quenching Thursday on the Dr. Kevin Show. But next month, that will become the first Thursday. So he's changing it up a little bit. So starting in January, I will be on the Dr. Kevin Show with the effervescent Dr. Kevin the first Thursday of every month for a Thirst Quenching Thursday. So always a lot of good stuff going on. You know what? I think we're going to do this right now before we really get into what's going on within the Republican Party. I have some audio here. Janet actually posted this on her Facebook page earlier, but I want to play this for you. This is Judge Andrew Napolitano on Fox News talking about why Trump's Muslim ban is profoundly unconstitutional, to use his words. And this is a few minutes long, so this will take us right into the next break, but take a listen.
Donald Trump sparking an uproar with his call for blocking Muslims from entering this country. His opponents slamming the idea of a ban based on religion, calling it outrageous and unconstitutional. But legal or not, some folks think Trump is onto something.
I think that almost every single person here, unless you're a Native American, is an immigrant.
I think we need, obviously, a better system to screen them, because what we're using isn't working.
A lot of people come in this country illegally and legally, and we're not vetting them properly, so we don't know what their intentions truly are.
And I think we should have stricter laws, and that's the thing about it. It's not about Muslims, because there's all races that do certain things.
Judge Andrew Napolitano is Fox News senior judicial analyst. All right, you're going to put the hammer down, yes or no, on whether or not Trump's plan is constitutional and legal.
Well, I think it's profoundly unconstitutional because one of the areas that the government cannot make decisions on is religion. So, first of all, the president doesn't write immigration law. The Congress does. The president has emergency powers to admit people when they are escaping political repression or humanitarian crises. He also has emergency powers to delay entry for people if their presence in the United States would cause some palpable harm. But he cannot use religion as a basis, nor could Congress use religion as a basis to admit or to refuse.
So Donald Trump today was sticking to his guns, but he also sort of insinuated that maybe it would just be a temporary measure to block Muslims. Does temporary pass any kind of constitutionality?
No, because the religion clause in the First Amendment, it has a couple of prongs to it. One is all persons, not citizens, persons have the right to practice their religion as they wish, free from any interference with the government. The other side of that coin is the government can't use religion as a basis for making decisions. Can it take religion into account? Of course it can. But can religion be the primary, principal, or exclusive basis for a governmental decision? Absolutely not.
Okay. Then you have to go to immigration rules.
Yes.
And if you got Congress involved in this, could Congress have the ability to say, we don't want to allow in people from certain nations?
Yes. Congress could stop all immigration. Congress could stop immigration from Syria, from Iraq, from Afghanistan if it wanted, and there's no serious constitutional challenge to that, because that's a decision based on national security or the expenditure of resources, people coming here and seeking the social safety net. As long as the decision is not based on religion, Congress can do it. Now, as for what Donald Trump has done, brilliant politically. Man, this is 20 hours old. This came out about last night around 5 or 6 o'clock. We're all talking about it all the time. He's energized his base. But he may have alienated certain parts, irreparably and permanently, certain parts of the Republican Party that want nothing to do with this kind of attitude.
Well, we saw what Paul Ryan said as Speaker of the House today.
Right.
Every other candidate running against him has come out and said that they are also not in agreement with him. So even if Donald Trump were president of the United States, via executive order, he could not do what...
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Matt Connarton here. Join Jen Coffey and I twice a week for Matt Connarton Unleashed, a political talk show that's a little different than what you're used to. No liberal or conservative agenda here, just an honest dialogue about truth and how things really work in the world of politics. Matt Connarton Unleashed, every Tuesday and Thursday night at 11 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio.
Join Elliot Jollish, the business therapist, each Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern for the Elliot Jollish Hour, as he interviews business experts on your behalf. And you're invited to email your business questions to questions@ecjgroup.com for answers, live, on air every Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Elliot Jollish Hour. Have you ever wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free today at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We're live, and we're back on this Thursday evening. Going into the break, we heard Judge Andrew Napolitano. The very end of that got cut off, but basically explaining why a ban on Muslims coming into the United States is unconstitutional in his view. The question did come up yesterday on Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, another political show that I do, where I am the co-host of the Honorable Gary S. Hopper. Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades is, you can see it Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation. And there's a replay Friday at 6 p.m. tomorrow. But We were talking, by the way, with Pam Tucker, who is exploring a run for the U.S. Senate. But Gary was making the argument that that it's not unconstitutional to say no Muslims because non-U.S. citizens are not protected by the Constitution. Judge Napolitano seemed to be making the argument that that all persons, it doesn't say citizens, this is all persons, are free to practice their religion. Now, my question would be, and just to be clear, I am not in favor of any kind of religious test or banning Muslims from entering the country. I think that's, as I said yesterday on Gary's show, un-American and creepy. When you take an entire group of people and paint them with the same broad brush and assume that they're all sane and thinking and going to do the same thing, that's the very nature of bigotry. But I do have to wonder if the U.S. Constitution only applies to people who are actually U.S. citizens, does Gary have a point? So I'd be curious to ask that of Judge Napolitano. What about how does this apply? Even though it says all persons, if you're talking about persons outside of the United States, how does that apply to them? But he does say that there can be no religious test for anyone entering the country. The president has no power to do that. Of course, Congress does have the power to, if they want to stop immigration. Congress can do that, certainly, but they cannot do it on religious grounds, which is interesting. So, I like Judge Andrew Napolitano. I know Jen's a big fan. From what I've seen of him, he seems to be able to, even though I think come on, if he's on Fox, you can bet he's most likely a conservative, but he seems to be intellectually honest in that he's able to separate whatever political beliefs he has from, really analyzing the law and coming up with an objective, non-ideological interpretation of what the law is. And that's what I like about him. So I think that's really cool. And I wanted to play that bit of audio for you. By the way, before we go any further tonight, we do have a phone line open for you if you'd like to chime in. The number is 617-417-4IPM. That's IPM as in IPM Nation. 617-417-4IPM or 4476 if you prefer. Of course, you can find all the contact information for the show at ipmnation.com/MC Unleashed. And if you're listening on IPM Nation 1, ipmnation.com/live1, you'll see our fancy chat room, which you can use, and our discuss feed as well. That is all right there for you. Of course, if you'd like to tweet me during the show or at any time, at Matt Connarton, you can use that. And don't forget Facebook, of course. You can post on the Matt Connarton Unleashed Facebook page during the show, and I'll keep an eye on that. I'll monitor that and share that, whatever you post there, or you can post there anytime. If you haven't liked the page yet, please do so. Whether you like me or you hate me, thank you for listening. Wait, by the way, I know that sounds counterintuitive to some people. Well, why would you listen to somebody you hate? But people do that all the time. You can hate a particular radio personality, but still love to hate them. I've certainly known people who hate Rush Limbaugh, but who listen to him anyway, just because they get off on hating him. There is that. So, whether you love to hate me or you hate to love me, thank you for being a part of this experience. So I was talking in the intro about Trump, and this whole thing is spun so wildly out of control. I have to tell you, I thought the 2012 race for the Republican nomination was pretty entertaining, largely because of the debates. And we had more debates in 2012. There was quite a few debates on the calendar for the Republicans in 2012. And I thought that was some of the greatest television in history. I loved the 2012 Republican debates. But this has far surpassed, and just in sheer entertainment value, 2016 has far surpassed that. And it's because of the guy with the big orange head, the Donald. He's just made this so interesting. There's a poll that has him with a 35% lead. And think about this, too. Even if all he had was a 10% lead, just to be in double digits in such a crowded field is very impressive. And a few days ago, he was making noise about saying, look, I know I signed a pledge, or I ruled it out that I would run as a third-party independent candidate, but I may yet do it if I'm not treated right by the Republican establishment. And now the Republican establishment is plotting against him, openly doing so, plotting against him in terms of they may have we've never seen it, not in my lifetime, certainly. And it's always been kind of this political junkies like me, for us, it's always been kind of a fantasy, a brokered convention, where the person who won all the primaries and seems to have the most delegates isn't necessarily going to come out of it the nominee. That never happens, but damn, wouldn't it be fascinating to watch that happen? That would be a fascinating political story, to actually see a political convention, actually see a contested, a brokered convention, a floor fight, if you will, for the nomination. Oh my God, it's a political junkie's wet dream. And they are openly threatening it. Let's grab this article here. And like I said during the intro too, look, no matter what happens, I mean, if there's a brokered convention, I'll tell you one thing, no matter what that looks like, it's going to be a mess. It's going to be a mess. If Trump has the primary votes to win the nomination and then they pull something at the convention to stick somebody else in there, and that is going to piss him off, and then he will run third party. So whether Trump is a Republican nominee or whether he runs as a third party independent candidate, Hillary Clinton is going to win. There's no way. That's why I said in the intro, I mean, I was sort of kidding, but not really. I'm standing by my prediction. Hillary Clinton will be the next president, because the Republican Party is going to lose big in 2016. This is a disaster. Look, if Trump is the nominee, Trump cannot win in the general election. And if Trump isn't the nominee, he's probably going to run as an independent if they steal this from him at the convention. Either way, it's going to throw the election to Hillary. She can't lose. She doesn't even have to campaign anymore. She's already got this sewn up. We're 2 months away from the New Hampshire primary. I'm telling you, she's already won. I might as well just start calling her President-elect Hillary Clinton. I don't see how she can lose at this point. This is a disaster for the Republicans. All right. Let me see here. GOP preparing for contested convention. This is from the Washington Post. Let me read this to you quickly. I know we're going to run into another break here, but okay. Republican officials and leading figures in the party's establishment are preparing for the possibility of a brokered convention as businessman Donald Trump continues to sit atop the polls in the GOP presidential race. More than 20 of them convened Monday near the Capitol for a dinner held by Republican National Committee Chairman Reince Priebus, and the prospect of Trump's nearing next year's nominating convention in Cleveland with a significant number of delegates dominated the discussion, according to 5 people familiar with the meeting. Weighing in that scenario, as Priebus and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell listened, several longtime Republican power brokers argued that if the controversial billionaire storms through the primaries, the party's establishment must lay the groundwork for a floor fight in which the GOP's mainstream wing could coalesce around an alternative, the people said. The development represents a major shift for veteran Republican strategists who, until this month, had spoken of a brokered convention only in the most hypothetical terms, and had tried to encourage a drama-free nomination by limiting debates and setting an earlier convention date. Now, those same leaders see a floor fight as a real possibility, and so does Trump, who said in an interview last week that he too is preparing. Because of the sensitivity of the topic and because they are wary of saying something that, if leaked, would provoke Trump to bolt the party and mount an independent bid, Priebus and McConnell were mostly quiet during the back and forth. They did not signal support for an overt anti-Trump effort, but near the end, McConnell and Priebus acknowledged that the group had a deadlocked convention to the group that a deadlocked convention is something the party should prepare for, both institutionally within the RNC and politically at all levels in the coming months. When asked Thursday about the dinner and convention planning, Sean Spicer, the RNC's chief strategist and spokesman, said, quote, "The RNC is neutral in this process, and the rules are set until the convention begins next July. Our goal is to ensure a successful nomination, and that requires us thinking through every scenario, including a contested convention," unquote. That's BS, by the way. I don't care what Spicer says. There's no way, under any other circumstances, they would be thinking through the scenario of a contested convention, just in case. Absolute BS. During the dinner, attendees delved into what exactly a brokered convention would look like. It would happen if no candidate was able to win the nomination on a first ballot vote, starting a multi-ballot exercise on the floor of the Quicken Loans Arena that could extend for hours until a candidate has secured sufficient support. Many of the delegates are bound on the first ballot, meaning that they must support the candidate they chose in primaries or at state conventions. But that restriction would lift if no nominee is chosen. The jockeying for delegates on a second ballot, or third, fourth, or fifth, would be intense and full of political deal-making, thus the term brokered convention. Okay, there's more to this article, but we're running against a break. I have to finish going through this with you. This is just so fascinating. Like I said, this is a political junkie's wet dream. Oh, my God, I hope this happens. This is great. We'll see. More Unleashed coming up. Don't go away.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
Circle of Hearts Radio is a sanctuary on the airwaves. Join me, Grandmother Elia, in the circle on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern, as I share information to both enlighten and nourish your soul.
Do you want to be a better communicator? Do you want to better connect with the important people in your life? Do you want to enrich your relationships? If so, join me, Matthew Cooper, on the Positive Control System Show every Wednesday evening at 11 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on OMTimes Radio. I'll meet you there.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors, connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Welcome back, everybody. Matt Connarton Unleashed. We are live. It is Thursday night here on IPM Nation 1, coming to you from the Uptown Auto Repair Studio in Manchester, New Hampshire. And, of course, as we are every Tuesday and Thursday, also on OTR FM, the premium channel on OMTimes Radio. Go to omtimes.com/IOM. Actually, just go to omtimes.com first and check out everything they've got going on. OMTimes is very, very cool. And then while you're there, after you've perused some other things on the site, click the radio link in the menu at the top, and it'll take you to OMTimes Radio. A lot of great stuff, a lot of really cool programming on OMTimes Radio. So please check out some of the other hosts. And at IPM Nation, of course, we're always adding new shows. A lot of cool stuff going on there, too. In fact, don't forget, tomorrow night on Unleashed, strictly on IPM Nation 1, my guest will be Slicko, host of Slicko's World, Friday nights at 7 p.m. on IPM Nation 2. And then Monday night, I'll be joined first by Rob from the Rob and Slim Show, which you can also hear every Wednesday on IPM Nation 2. And then in the second half of the show, Nigerian author Emor David is going to be joining us. So we'll get probably pretty serious for the second half of Unleashed on Monday night. Those are both on IPM Nation 1. And then Tuesday night, of course, we're back right here on OTR FM as well, as we are on OTR FM every Tuesday and Thursday. So don't forget the television edition of Unleashed. That is already up. You can find that on IPM Nation, both on our video and our YouTube channels, as well as this week's edition of Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades, where the Honorable Gary S. Hopper and I talk with prospective Senate candidate Pam Tucker, who is she is exploring a possible run for the U.S. Senate. So lots of good stuff, lots of great new content this week to check out. We have to finish this article. This is too good. So if you're joining us in progress, if you missed the first half of the show, first of all, where were you? But I'm reading this article from the Washington Post about and salivating while I do it over the possibility of a brokered convention for the Republicans this time around. Okay, so we'll pick up where we left off. Upon leaving the Monday dinner, several attendees said they would share memos about delegate allocation in each state, as well as research about the 1976 convention, the last time the GOP gathered without a clear nominee. The rules for selection of delegates are complicated and largely decided state by state. Most states now elect delegates based on a proportional basis, with at-large statewide delegates supplemented by delegates awarded by each congressional district. This makes the task of securing delegates more difficult in many states because Republican candidates must, in some cases, push for support in overwhelmingly Democratic districts. They must also qualify for each state's ballot in order to win any delegates at all, making the arduous series of state-by-state rules governing ballot access a potentially critical factor as well. The campaign of Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, seems to have mastered the intricacies of state ballot access rules and is said to have qualified in more than 40 states and territories, more than any other candidate. The emerging consensus at the highest levels of the Republican Party about how the 2016 race could unfold comes after a fresh wave of polls showing Trump leading in early voting states and nationally, even as he continues to unleash incendiary comments such as his proposal to block Muslims from entering the U.S. It also marks the close of a months-long chapter in the campaign when a brokered convention was considered a fanciful concept rather than a possibility that merited serious review. Conservative radio host William J. Bennett, who served as President Ronald Reagan's education secretary, said the unrest of the right echoes the run-up to the 1976 GOP convention, when Reagan challenged then-President Gerald Ford. But Bennett called this moment a little more intense. Bennett said, quote, "That said, people shouldn't be panicking, and I think things will calm down when people in the party leadership realize there are core truths to what Trump is saying, and he's not trying to take down the party. For many conservatives, his candidacy is a positive disruption. Let things run their course. If anything, the GOP convention may get a ton of interest. People will want to tune in. They won't tune in to the Democratic convention," unquote. Well, I mean, he's right about that. My God. If this is really going to happen, yeah, the Republican convention is going to get huge ratings, whereas the Democratic convention will be a snooze because, it'll be just be the coronation of Hillary. So who cares? Nothing of consequence will happen there. Stuart Stevens, a former advisor to Mitt Romney, said the need to plan for a brokered convention is not necessarily all about Trump. Yeah, that's more BS. But here's what he said, quote, "Beyond Trump, what you're seeing is the party bracing for a potential Hunger Games scenario where you have a different person win each of the first 4 primaries and they all have the resources to slug it out until the convention. It's smart to think of contingencies, and if you actually spend time with the numbers, it's possible someone won't quickly get the number they need to be the nominee," unquote. Yeah, that's just more BS. That's just more, nothing to see here, nothing to panic about, BS. I guarantee you, in ordinary circumstances, they are not planning for contingencies just in case, because anything could happen. Come on. That is absolutely not happening. This is panic, and they're trying to make it look like they're not panicked. The three-course meal at the Source, an Asian fusion restaurant near the Capitol, was part of a regular invitation-only dinner hosted by Priebus, in which he solicits candid input from party leaders. Those familiar with Monday's deliberations spoke on the condition of anonymity to describe the private matter. Attendees included Ward Baker, executive director of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, Rob Sims, his counterpart at the National Republican Congressional Committee, Ron Kaufman, an RNC committeeman and Romney confidant, and pollster Linda DeVille. Whit Ayers, an advisor to Senator Marco Rubio, and Vin Weber, this is a familiar name, an ally to former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, also were there, among others. Excuse me. It was not supposed to unfold this way. After Romney's 2012 defeat, which followed a protracted nomination season, the RNC moved to speed up the process. It's going to go real freaking fast, actually, because I think Trump is going to sweep these primaries. But in August, Priebus predicted a swift and relatively painless nomination contest 2 months after Trump jumped in the race. He said on Meet the Press, quote, "We're going to have a nominee probably by the end of March or the beginning of April," unquote. The problem facing the party, a crowded field led by a billionaire firebrand, was evident Thursday, a deadline to qualify for the Virginia presidential primary. According to the state GOP, 13 candidates qualified. Given the acrimony and uncertainty and the relative ease of fundraising, there is little incentive for any of them to drop out. RNC members will huddle in January in South Carolina to discuss the convention. Although no rule changes can be implemented until the convention, the people familiar with the dinner gathering said top Republicans would like to begin that winter meeting with more clarity about how the RNC would handle a contested convention. When asked by the Washington Post last week what he thought about a contested convention, Trump said he is getting ready for one. He said, quote, "I don't think it's going to be a brokered convention, but if it is, I'd certainly go all the way. And I think I'd have a certain disadvantage. I'll be disadvantaged. The deal making, that's my advantage. My disadvantage is that I'd be going up against guys who grew up with each other, who know each other intimately, and I don't know who they are, okay? That's a big disadvantage. These kind of guys stay close. They all know each other. They want each other to win," unquote. So what happens? See, this is how I see it, as an outsider, because I'm not, nor have I ever been a Republican, nor do I see myself ever being one. But although I have voted for Republicans before, but this kind of the whole Islamophobia just is repulsive to me. But so what happens if they do figure out a way to get him out in terms of the nominating process and make Jeb the nominee, or Ted Cruz? Well, I'll tell you what, if Ted Cruz is the nominee, then they still lose. They're no better off. Well, I shouldn't say they're no better off. They're not much better off with Ted Cruz than they are with Trump. So, it's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. But if they find a way to steal this from Trump, then he's just going to run third party. He'll run as an independent. His pride will be hurt. He'll be pissed off. And he'll run as an independent. And that hands the presidency over to Hillary Clinton even more easily than if Trump were the nominee. If Trump is the nominee, Hillary's the next president. If Trump runs third party and splits the Republican vote, Hillary Clinton is the next president. A lot of people say, actually, that would be interesting too. That would be kind of like history repeating itself. With a Clinton becoming the president via a split vote. Because if you recall, in 1992, it was Bill Clinton challenging George H.W. Bush for the presidency, and there was a third-party candidate, Ross Perot. And Perot, many people say that the reason Bill Clinton won the presidency is because Perot split the vote. And that if Perot wasn't in there, Bush might have won re-election. I've always been skeptical about that part of it. I mean, Perot did do very well for an independent candidate. I think he got like 10 or 12% of the vote the first time around, because he did run again in 96 when he was less credible. But I mean, he might have, but there's no way to be sure how many votes did he take away from Bush versus how many votes did he take away from Clinton. I think Clinton would have won anyway, either way. That's my personal read on it. But a lot of people disagree with me and say, no, Perot's presence in the race threw the election to Bill Clinton. So wouldn't that be interesting? His wife runs all these years later, and once again, a third-party candidate throws the election to someone named Clinton. It's very possible. It's very plausible. But either way, again, barring a scandal, because we are talking about the Clintons, so there's always that specter of scandal looming. But I'll be honest with you, it'd have to be a pretty bad scandal, I think. I mean, this is incredible. I mean, Trump as he continues to make himself more and more appealing to the conservative base of the Republican Party, he just continues to make himself, I think, less appealing to the, for one thing, to independents, because you need the independents to win the presidency. Registered Democrats are going to vote for the Democrat. Registered Republicans are going to vote for the Republican. It's the independents. That's where the swing vote is. And Trump's not going to be able to get those people. Not the way he's acting. I don't even know how he course corrects out of this for the general. I really don't. We got one more segment to go. A little bit more coming up. Unleashed. Don't go away. Be back in about 2 minutes. We are live on IPM Nation 1 and the new OTR FM. Stay with me.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
The name is Bond. James Bond.
No, the name is Joe, The Joe Show. And we are returning back for our 9th season here on OMTimes Radio. So tune in every Wednesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, on OMTimes.com/mobile. You can take us wherever you go. Yeah!
Time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is.
Hi there. Welcome back. Matt Connarton Unleashed as we cruise into our final segment tonight on this glorious Thursday evening. What do you think of this bumper music? Do you like this? Ooh, I like that part. I like that part right there. That's nice. That's, by the way, if I haven't said it on the air before, thank you to Mr. Producer, the mysterious Mr. Producer, for furnishing us with some good bumper music for the show. Listen, before we wrap up, because we have a little bit more to go, just a quick reminder, Unleashed, 5 nights a week, 11 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation 1, and, of course, every Tuesday and Thursday night also on the OTR FM premium channel on OMTimes Radio, and, of course, the television edition of Unleashed every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern on IPM Nation, and then we put that up and available on demand on both the IPM Nation YouTube and Vimeo channels. And we got some great stuff. Slicko will be on with me tomorrow night, Monday night, Rob from the Rob and Slim Show, and then Emor David, Nigerian author. Really looking forward to that. That's going to be a really interesting show. Before we go, this is from the political page on HuffPost. This is something that's interesting. You know, one of the complaints, before we get into the article itself, is one of the complaints that I hear from people is that there are not enough, you know, if Islam is this religion of peace and whatnot, and these radicals have chosen to, you know, pick certain passages out of the Quran and use that as their reasoning for why they would, you know, kill the infidels and all this madness. Why don't more Muslims, mainstream Muslims, whatever you want to call them, mainstream American Muslims, why aren't they speaking out? And that is one thing. While I absolutely am opposed to what I feel is bigotry, when you paint an entire religion or ethnicity of people or whatever as all one thing, when clearly they are not all one thing, and when you just assume the worst about all of them, that's wrong. And I don't agree with, you know, keeping Muslims out of the country and all that nonsense. Like I said before, I describe it as un-American and creepy to do that. But I will concede this one thing. For those of us who feel the way I do about it and who take that point of view, it would be helpful if mainstream Muslims, peaceful Muslims, could be more visible in terms of their denouncing. It would strengthen our case if they would be more visible and louder about, you know, really being out there and saying, in terms of the radical murderers that have kind of staked out their own corner of Islam, this radical Islam, you know, if they would say, you know, not in our name, and just be a little more vocal and visible about it. Some of them are, but I would love to see more of it. It would be helpful. It would help everyone concerned. So I stumbled upon this on HuffPost. Obama's tricky balancing act in getting Muslim Americans to fight radicalization. They say it doesn't help to single them out. All right, so this was written by Jennifer Bendery and Sam Stein on HuffPost, and this went up just this afternoon. Muslim American officials and even some experts on violent extremism are not entirely sold on a recent push by the Obama administration for Muslim leaders to play a more visible role in countering radicalization in the U.S. Obama pressed the issue in his Sunday night address to the nation, which was prompted by the recent shooting in San Bernardino, California, that left 14 dead. The president called on the Muslim community to step up their public condemnations of violent extremism, saying that extremist ideology was, quote, a real problem that Muslims must confront without excuse, unquote. And by the way, some people kind of were critical of Obama. People who tend to take my position on this were actually critical of Obama, saying that, well, he put that in there to placate the conservatives who assume that all Muslims are bad, etc. I personally had no problem with him including that in his speech. I thought it was a good thing to include in there. It was a rhetorical shift for Obama, who in past instances of extremism involving a Muslim perpetrator mourned the events and eulogized the victims, but made no mention of Islam. And in the days that followed his Sunday address, other administration officials echoed the president's call. But the rhetoric around anti-radicalization strategies can be just as delicate as the geopolitics. And the new talk also produced new confusion. Top Muslim American officials say they're not sure what exactly the president expects Muslim groups to do that they aren't already doing. Representative Keith Ellison, a Democrat of Minnesota, one of the 2 Muslim members of Congress, said, quote, all of them denounce terrorism. All of them are trying to do good in the community and be more part of the community. These people are always telling me how they're doing interfaith dialogue, feeding the poor, opening healthcare clinics to people of any faith to participate in, unquote. Other Muslim leaders said they fear there could be ugly side effects if they keep being singled out as the primary community responsible for responding to radical extremists. Quote, we understand there is an issue that exists in terms of radicalization or people being scrutinized by ISIS, unquote, said Imran Siddiqui, executive director of CAIR, C-A-I-R, Arizona. Quote, but you can't put the onus on the entire community. We are coming on the needs of the Planned Parenthood shooting. We are coming on the heels of the Planned Parenthood shooting. So there's a guy who subscribed to the Christian faith who defended God's army, but according to his wife, read the Bible cover to cover, who by all intents and purposes was a zealot from a Christian background. But that same type of scrutiny is not placed on the larger Christian community, even though there is a threat of right-wing extremism, unquote. That is... Siddiqui makes a very, very valid point there. It's hard to argue with that. For all his concerns, Siddiqui was largely apologetic for Obama's shift in focus. He attributed the change to a president encumbered by political pressures to adopt certain verbiage. Ellison, however, was slightly less forgiving, saying that if the president is looking for Muslims to play a bigger role in countering violent extremism, he would be well served to actually meet with them first. He said, quote, I mean, the president has never visited a mosque inside the United States. That's a fact. He has been invited numerous occasions by me personally, unquote. That's not fair. What Ellison is saying there, criticizing the president that he's never visited a mosque in the U.S. Barack Obama cannot do that. He can't, because the moment that he does, he'll have every Republican in the country pointing at him and screaming, look, see, he's visiting a mosque. He really is a Muslim. He's a Muslim terrorist who just wanted to be president so he could destroy the country from inside the White House. See, he's going into that mosque to pray to Allah. That is exactly what would happen. Barack Obama cannot enter a mosque, and Keith Ellison is completely out of line for criticizing him that. And he knows it. Ellison's not a dumb guy. He understands why politically Obama can't do that. That's a cheap shot. That's as cheap a shot as some Republicans take at Obama on this stuff. While there's been no mosque visit, the president did reach out to Muslim leaders last spring when the White House hosted a summit on countering violent extremism strategies. Ellison was among the nearly 24 attendees who brainstormed ideas on how various groups, law enforcement, religious leaders, government officials, and social service providers can work together on the issue. Attendees said the summit was an exercise in charting out a holistic approach. And indeed, the ideas emphasized during the day didn't put any onus on a single group or religion. The administration has also launched its Strong Cities Network, an international effort that connects city leaders, blah, blah, blah. Let me skip down because this is all, it is kind of a long article, and I want to make sure I get the key points in. There has been a divergence in White House strategy. While Bush didn't shy away from calling out Islam as an inspiring force for the radicalized, Obama has carefully avoided making that connection. So much so, argues Fever, that the administration has given the impression that they're fooled about the nature of it. In that vein, Obama's comments on Sunday were a shift toward Bush's approach. But it's one other aspect of counterterrorism that needs to be approached with care. There's more here. We're not going to get through the whole thing, so I'm going to leave it at that. If you want to read the entire thing, it is up on HuffPost. Obama's Tricky Balancing Act. You can find it. But it's going to be very, very interesting to watch. Like I said, getting back to the Trump thing, just to watch how this plays out in terms of how the establishment is reacting to him, how they're preparing for a brokered convention. You know, if you hurt his pride, he's going to go independent. And I'm telling you, it's the best thing. Honestly, this would be my advice to the Republican Party right now. Don't worry about a brokered convention. If he's your nominee, he's your nominee. By the way, just a quick thought that I had earlier before we got about a minute left before we got to really wrap up. But why is it that in politics, it's sort of this unwritten rule that you either have to pretend you agree with someone on everything, or you have to denounce them entirely? In other words, I see a way. So you have these Republicans who either they're all for Trump and think he's great publicly, or they're completely denouncing him based on some of his incendiary comments. Isn't there a way to walk the line? Why is it that in politics you can't say, for example, I support this candidate, but I don't agree with this candidate on everything? Maybe I only agree with this candidate on 80% of what he says. So why can't some Republicans say, I agree with Trump on a lot of things, so I support him, but I don't agree with him on this particular thing. On this particular thing, I personally think he's wrong. You can't do that in politics. It's like you got to be all in or all out. It's very strange to me. I'm reminded of when Reagan picked George H.W. Bush to be his running mate. People questioned Reagan on it. Well, how could you pick him? He doesn't agree with you on a lot of things. He's pro-choice, because at the time, George H.W. Bush was pro-choice. And Reagan said, look, if two people agree on absolutely everything all the time, it means one of them isn't thinking. So there was room for debate and disagreement, and that's healthy. But you can't really do that anymore. It's weird. All right, we're out of time. I'll see you tomorrow night. Good night, everybody. Thank you.